The events unfold on October 7, 2007 year. It is 4 days before the military departs for Afghanistan. Captain Sam Cahill misses his beloved wife Grace very much and is willing to do whatever it takes to get home. Today Sam wrote her a letter. Later, Sam handed the letter to the major, hoping it would not come to the point of being sent. At home, one of Sam's daughters, Isabel, was very sad, for the father was leaving again in a few days. Sam was able to cheer up his daughter. Soon Maggie joined their fun. The children are anxious for the father to stay home. Next, we are shown Tommy Cahill being released on parole from prison. The guy is met by his older brother Sam. He thinks it's time to ask forgiveness from that woman, but Tommy won't discuss it. Before he left, Sam asked him not to do anything stupid again. Tommy is trying to get along in life, but he doesn't even have his own place. There was to be a family dinner in the evening. Grace does not like the presence in the house of a relative with a criminal record. Elsie, the brother's stepmother, is glad the whole family is finally gathered at the table. On Tuesday, Sam will leave for service. Hank is proud of his eldest son, for he is serving his country. The father thinks Tommy should look up to his brother. Because of this, there is a conflict. After seeing his brother off, Sam asked him once again to stay out of trouble. In the evening, Sam took off his wedding ring, as he usually did before the service. He told the wife that he loved her. Meanwhile, Tommy was sitting at the bar. On October 12, 2007, Sam and his soldiers left for Afghanistan. As they flew in a helicopter and were 3 minutes away from disembarking, they were hit. Grace was taking a bath when the doorbell rang. When she saw the captain and the chaplain on the doorstep, she knew at once what they were here for. She told her daughters to go into the room and cried before the officers could say anything. In the evening, Grace and her daughters watched a video from the family archives. Soon Tommy came to return his brother's car. He couldn't believe it when he heard from Grace that Sam was no longer alive. He came to his parents' house, but he didn't go in. The stepmother hugged him and told him that Sam was with their mother now. Grace was going with her daughters to the farewell ceremony. Isabel refused to go. Grace hugged her daughters, trying to be strong for them. The farewell ceremony was held at the church. Everyone expressed their sincere condolences to the family. The major gave Grace the letter from Sam, who had written it in case he did not return. The woman still can't believe that her beloved husband is gone. Hank, who is a former Marine, again came into conflict with his youngest son, believing that he will never be like Sam. Elsie begged them to stop. Hank walked away. Grace was hesitant to open the envelope and read the letter. Meanwhile, the Taliban lead the surviving captive American soldiers, Sam among them. The soldiers were locked up and wondering what the enemy would do to them. Sam ordered Private Joe not to give up important information at any cost. At 3 o'clock in the morning, Grace received a call from Tommy. He asked her for money because he couldn't afford to pay for the drinks he had bought at the bar. If he didn't pay, the police would be informed. By violating the parole rule, Tommy will go back to prison. Grace agreed to help and arrived to the bar, giving the money to the bartender. She yelled at the guy who had nothing on his mind but entertainment. Grace had no choice but to bring Tommy to her home. He woke up with a bad headache. His nieces made pancakes for their mother, hoping it would make her less sad. Unexpectedly, Hank came in, bringing groceries. Tension still reigned between the father and son, but Hank still found the strength to admit that he had been wrong yesterday. But the father still doesn't understand why Tommy is so careless and throws halfway through any business he takes on. Suddenly Hank cried, pining for his eldest son. At that time, Sam and Joe saw a helicopter and realized they were being searched for. They had to get out at all costs. When Grace returns home, she is surprised to see that Tommy is renovating her kitchen. The woman does not like the fact that Tommy had not consulted her beforehand. It had been 2 months since the soldiers had been captured. Private Joe could not remain calm, unlike the captain. The Taliban don't interrogate them, they just don't give them food. Joe doesn't understand why after the helicopter crash, Sam rescued him and pulled him out of that lake. They watched the Taliban arguing about something. Finally they decided to interrogate the prisoners. Sam reminded Joe not to give out any information. The soldiers were put into a car against their will and taken to an unknown destination. When they were brought to one of the camps, the Taliban, who knew English, began to translate. It turned out that one of them had used a satellite phone to call his pregnant wife, thus revealing the location of the camp. Thus he put their entire mission in jeopardy. Sam and Joe witnessed the guilty man being deprived of his life. The Taliban leader ordered Sam to tell the camera that outsiders were not welcome in this country. Winter has come. Grace is still depressed. Elsie brought the girls, who began to help her uncle paint the kitchen. Tommy found common ground with his nieces, and Grace was happy about that. One of the workers got paint all over him, and Grace decided to pick up something from Sam's clothes for him. It was hard for her to open the closet and look at her late husband's things. When Grace came down to them, Tommy noticed her condition. She went into the next room and cried. The Taliban leader questioned Sam. If he didn't tell them what they were interested in, Joe was finished. The private was very frightened, but Sam kept quiet anyway. Today Tommy and his nieces surprised Grace for her birthday. They invited family and guests to celebrate in the new kitchen. Grace is happy to have the support of her loved ones, but she can hardly hold back tears when she thinks of her husband. Later, Grace and her daughters and Tommy decided to go for a walk. Tommy told Isabel that when he was a boy, her daddy saved his life on that river. The family was skating, having fun. For the first time in a long time, Grace was genuinely smiling. Later, Tommy watched the woman he did not want to show his face to in the street. That night he confessed to Grace that this woman he had robbed had been tormented by nightmares for 3 years, afraid he would return to her. Tommy found the strength to ask her forgiveness. He was very sorry for what he had done. Grace said she was proud of him. She believes that Tommy will be able to start living right. The guy and the woman realized that they had many interests in common. Under the influence of their feelings, Tommy and Grace kissed. The woman recollected herself and went outside, trying to come to her senses. Tommy cried, and then left. That night Grace could not sleep. She took Sam's last letter out of the nightstand, but she didn't dare open it. Meanwhile, Joe was screaming and begging the captain to help. But Sam remained silent. The whole process was recorded on camera. At one point Sam was given a metal pipe and told to put the fellow soldier out of his misery, but he refused to do so. Then the enemy pointed a gun at him. Sam had no choice but to obey. It took Sam a long time to come to his senses, not believing that he really did it. The next time they met, Grace and Tommy were embarrassed about that kiss. Their conversation was interrupted by Hank, who was surprised that Tommy was helping Grace around the house. Meanwhile, the Taliban camp was attacked. Soon it was taken under control by American soldiers, who freed Sam. Tommy spends every day with his nieces and their mother. While the daughters and Tommy were having fun, Grace received a call that sent her into shock. She was on the verge of hysteria, not knowing whether to smile or cry. The family arrived to meet Sam at the military base. Sam hugged his daughters and then his wife, brother, and parents. They couldn't believe he was alive. Sam returned home. He was severely emaciated. Finally the family was reunited. In the evening Grace tried to support her husband, but he made it clear that he wanted to be alone. Tommy saw an article in the paper about Joe, who had not returned from the war. Hank tried to have a frank conversation with his eldest son. He remembered that when he returned from Vietnam, he had become estranged from his family. Sam spends time with his family, but does not participate in their fun. He thanked the brother for looking out for his wife and children in his absence. Tommy wasn't expecting it when the brother asked if he was having an affair with Grace, because they looked like two teenagers in love. Tommy tried to reassure Sam, but he continued to insist on his own. Joe's wife Cassie visited the Cahill family, along with her young son, who was without a father. She asked Sam if he had seen Joe in his last moments. Sam lied that he had not. He couldn't sleep at night, so he rearranged dishes. Any sound frightened him, so Sam kept a gun in his hands. Grace became more and more worried about him. Sam arrived at the military base and said he was ready to return to service. He admitted that he couldn't be around his family because no one understood him. In the evening at dinner there was tension between the family members. The daughters sensed that something was wrong with their father. Sam went into the other room. Grace followed him and asked him to talk to her. The husband asked her if she was having a secret affair with Tommy. She admitted that they had only kissed once. At that moment, Grace was sure that Sam would never go back to her. The husband didn't believe her, convinced that the wife wasn't just kissing Tommy, but that there was more between them. He left the house and visited Joe's grave. In the morning he tried to play with his daughters, but they were afraid of him. Sam hugged the children, promising that things would soon be the way they were. At home, Grace asked her husband where he had been all night. He said he needed to clear his head. The husband and wife embraced. It was Maggie's birthday and the family gathered around the table. Tommy brought his girlfriend Tina, and Isabel was very upset. The girl immediately became sad. Isabel began to deliberately get on her father's nerves. At one point, Sam couldn't stand it anymore and yelled at his daughter. In tears, Isabel told the father that Uncle Tommy was better than him and that the mother really loved him. There was silence between the family members and guests. In the evening Grace asked her daughter why she had lied. The girls said they no longer loved their father and wanted Uncle Tommy in his place. In tears, Grace watched through the window as her husband nervously walked around the yard. She called Elsie, for she did not know what to expect from Sam. Tommy was immediately ready to go to his brother's house. Grace tried to talk to Sam, but it was like he couldn't hear her. He had the gun in his hand. Grace was very frightened, and Sam began smashing up the kitchen and screaming that he had gone through hell to get home, and in return he had received betrayal from his wife and brother. Grace repeated that it wasn't her fault, but the husband went into a frenzy. Suddenly Tommy appeared and tried to reason with his brother by hugging him. Tommy had his gun ready while Grace ran to the second floor to protect the daughters. The sirens of a police car could be heard. Sam guessed that one of the family members called the police, and it made him furious. Sam was out of control and screaming, then decided to leave his life voluntarily. Tommy and Grace panicked and tried to talk him out of this rash act. Eventually Sam turned himself into the police. Grace greatly missed her husband, who had been committed to a mental institution. Finally, Grace dared to read the letter he had written in case he did not return. In the letter, Sam wrote that he loved her and their daughters more than anything. One day Tommy got a call from his brother, who was having a hard time with all this. Grace went to visit her husband at the clinic. There was an engagement ring on his finger. With tears in his eyes, Sam confessed that he had had something to do with what had happened to Joe. He had done it to survive. Grace forgave him and hugged him. Now they would have to learn to live with it together. Please subscribe to the channel. Thank you for watching to the end. See you soon.